Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you all. Welcome to the Power of Trust You, Pulse of the Industry. My name is Vanessa Martinez, Product Marketing Manager at Trust You, and I'm so excited to welcome you all to our Q2 Live platform event, where we will be going through our Pulse of the Industry report, a report capturing quarterly data on traveler intent, traveler behavior, and the latest hospitality trends. You may have seen the original Pulse of the Industry report that we released last month, but based on some recalculated numbers and statistics, we have updated the report to accurately reflect the review volume trends both globally and by region, and we'll be walking you through those today. Just a few housekeeping items to start. We do have you all muted on the line to ensure the best sound quality, but we want this session to be interactive, so please chat us your questions or use the Q&A box in the GoToWebinar control panel to let us know if you would like more information about any of the topics we discussed today. Also, and as a bonus to those of you who are on the line, there will be one lucky winner announced at the end of the session who will receive a $50 Amazon gift card. So be sure to stay until the end in order to qualify and find out if you are the lucky winner. Joining me today, as you can see, is my colleague, Catalina Brinza, who was the creative mastermind behind this report. Welcome, Catalina.
Hi, Vanessa. Thanks for inviting me, and hi, everyone. I'm a digital marketing manager, and with Trust You, I entered the world of hospitality and hospitality tech. And I must admit, I am amazed with this industry every day because it is so complex. It is always evolving. It has a lot of challenges in it. And ultimately, its purpose is to make people happier, have unforgettable experiences, and live their life. And I don't think there is a greater purpose than that. And since I've been with Trust You, I have developed a passion of seeing how the industry evolves, how consumers' behaviors are changing, and what trends are emerging. And today, together with Vanessa, we're here to share with you some of the insights we have included in our Pulse of the Industry report.
Absolutely. Thank you, Catalina. And to give you an idea of how we'll be discussing everything today, we'll be going through the 5 W's of the Pulse of the Industry report: what, who, where, when, and of course, why. So going through and really breaking down the internal structure and reasoning of the report. And then you will also hear some key findings from some of our industry experts, as well as a big picture look at global trends with a narrowed down peek at regional findings that you may be surprised by, and others that you may be experiencing yourselves already. We'll then finish off by giving you the resources that you need to dive into this data further. So to jump into it, Catalina, what is the Pulse of the Industry report?
To answer your question, Vanessa, the Pulse of the Industry is part of our data marketing projects. And with the help of these data marketing initiatives, we want to support hoteliers in their decision-making process with the latest insights and trends from the industry. And we can talk about the Pulse of the Industry without mentioning the Review Insights reports, which is one of our first data marketing projects we implemented here at Trust You. And some of you may have heard of this research. So the Review Insights reports is an annual research that offers a global and regional perspective on travel and hospitality. And it focuses on certain indicators that we are following throughout the year, and we compare with other years as well, such as impact scores, review volume, travel contribution to GDP, mobile adoption rate, and so on. And usually we'll launch this report somewhere in March so as to make sure that we are able to analyze and capture all the data from the previous year. For the Review Insights report, we have 5 editions. So we have the global edition, and we have 4 reports that are dedicated to regional data from EMEA, APAC, US, and TAC. And the Pulse of the Industry came based on the success of the Review Insights report. With the Pulse of the Industry, we have a look at quarterly data so as to give you access to the latest insights. And as the Review Insights reports, the pulse of the industry also includes regional and global travel stats, but this time they are available in a single report. We have also the same combination between our own and third-party research so as to be able to give you a comprehensive overview. We have published the first edition of The Pulse of the Industry in May, and we were very happy to receive positive feedback from the industry, and especially see that it's a useful piece of content. And we believe that the timing couldn't have been better because 2022 marked a new era of travel. And in the last almost 3 years, we saw the world changing, and this had an impact on travel and hospitality as well. So that's why we believe it's important for us to give you data as the industry changes on a quarterly basis. And in terms of the data that we use, as we mentioned, we use two main data sources. So the first one is our own data that comes from our guest experience platform, where we look at indicators such as review volume and impact scores. And the second one is the third-party research. So this one we use to identify certain trends and overall travel and hospitality evolution. And for everything that comes from third-party research, we also have included links in our report so that you can access the original materials. And in terms of the time frame, because we speak about the first quarter of 2022, we looked at the data from January 1st to March 31st. Also, we have received many requests from our customers and partners to benchmark this data against the 2019 data, not necessarily the 2021 data. So that's why we included in the report also insights that come from the first quarter of 2019. And why pulse of the industry? So what we noticed with the Review Insights reports is that unfortunately we can't capture everything that's happening throughout the year. And especially with the last 3 years, they have proved to us that things may change even on a weekly basis. So that's why we wanted to have the opportunity to look at a more granular level at trends and make sure we better capture and understand the evolution of travel intent and behavior. With the last years, we saw that political, economical, and social events can impact travels in ways we haven't imagined before. So with the pulse of the industry, we can evaluate this impact on a quarterly basis. But this also offers us the opportunity to look at more insights into pressing challenges and opportunities for hoteliers.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kata, for that introduction and really the breakdown of the report. It definitely gives us clarity into the data we'll be sharing with everyone in just a moment. But before we do jump into that, we have a quick insights video from our internal industry experts from different regions around the globe. We recently hosted a series of LinkedIn live streams going over both our Review Insights report that Catalina mentioned that was released at the beginning of the year, as well as our Pulse of the Industry report. And our experts covered their own regional trends, some challenges, and what recovery looks like to them.
Nowadays, keeping the balance between technology and the human touch while creating unforgettable experiences for guests seems to be challenging sometimes, right? If you consider all the other challenges hotels are facing today. Usage of data and technology has proven to be a safe way to move forward and focus on what matters most, the human connection. So hospitality is all about emotion, and yeah, I think we shouldn't forget this.
Talking about a defining moment in the travel industry, I don't think there's one bigger than what we are seeing now. And I'm not surprised. In this post-COVID era of flexible working, travel is going to play a much bigger role in the way companies collaborate, engage, and motivate their people. And that also means travel will rely even more on reviews.
It's almost like, if they don't have a way to message the hotels directly, they're less likely to go face to face and ask for a solution. So honestly, I just think that the use of tech is just a huge trend, and I don't think it's going anywhere. I think it's going to increase. So I feel like we all need to adapt to it, and I think the US is just a little maybe ahead of the game in that realm because we all have a phone addiction.
It's always interesting to hear the different regional perspectives and what they hold. And I know a lot of us feel what we call COVID fatigue after adapting to what the pandemic has done and continues to do really to our industry. But it is important to realize that while globally we definitely are in a better place than just a few years ago, that not all regions are recovering at the same rate. So we still have some that still have travel regulations, testing and vaccine regulations. So again, while those global numbers are important, regional numbers can be a bit more insightful for you. And thankfully, we will be walking and taking you through both of those today.
And let's go straight into our key findings. And for this, we want to focus on two key findings that come from our own data. And the first one is related to the review volume. This is no news already that travel continued to recover in Q1 2022. We saw, and you'll be seeing in this presentation as well, some insane percentage increases, such as 200% or 800% when comparing the data from the first quarter this year to Q1 2021. And although these seems like very encouraging numbers, and sometimes they can set us up for very high expectations, we decided to look at how these first numbers of 2022 compare against 2019, based also on the request we have received from our customers. And you will find also these numbers in the updated version of the report. And if you're looking at this graph that shows you this comparison, you'll see that at global level, we're somewhere at 60% in terms of the review volume compared to Q1 2019. And in terms of the region, EMEA is leading the recovery race, followed by US and APAC. As you can see from the graph, we're not yet at the pre-pandemic level. The differences are very clear, but chances are that Q2 will close this gap, and some regions can see even a greater spike compared to 2019 in the same period. And for the second key finding, Vanessa will reveal you the top global impact scores.
Yeah, so another key finding, as Catalina mentioned, is impact scores. And this goes a little bit more into the qualitative side of things. So we have a lot of numbers and a lot of quantitative data. This breaks it down a little bit more into sort of the why behind those scores. And impact scores leverage review data, and they kind of, as mentioned, fill in the gap between what people say and how that actually is impacting the scores that they leave. They're based on our semantic analysis from all data from all reviews. And this way we can estimate the impact that, for example, housekeeping has on a performance score. These scores are then put into different semantic categories. You can see some examples here. And they're divided into both that positive and negative impact for each category. So if we look at the ones we see on the screen now, you'll see that service, hotel, and location are the three sentiments that have the most positive impacts on review scores. And if we break that down, service is an obvious one, as guest experience is more important than ever. And I feel like guests are actually more critical and expect a lot more in their travels now, especially in regards to the communication, in regards to cleanliness. So I think their overall experience, as Catalina said, maybe expectations are heightened. We don't want to get overly ambitious with numbers, but obviously providing that same level of good customer service is very critical for a good score for you in the long run as well. Hotel can cover a lot of ground, but anything from the atmosphere or vibe of your hotel to even dated or broken features that really just should be updated. And location, this actually varies because this is purely dependent on what the guest deems as a good location for their experience. Maybe they want to be in a city center where this is easy to access public transportation or even walkable, or they may want something quieter that's on the outskirts. And again, all depending on what a guest is seeking. So a tip from us to you here is ensure that you are very clear in what your hotel is describing as your location, exact location, and the benefits of that location as well. Moving to the bottom three, we see Wi-Fi, price, and room. Wi-Fi, with so many people now being able to do remote work, having a stable and fast connection is imperative for those who are using your hotel as a working vacation. And we really don't see this trend going anywhere anytime soon, so it really is in your best interest to invest in a really solid Wi-Fi. Price is something that can be tricky. We all know something to advise is to be very transparent in what you're offering for that price that the guests will be paying. So keeping that open line of communication as far as what the guests will receive for the price they are paying. And room is similar to hotel. This can cover a wide array of categories, but what we can guess here is rooms were not up to standards for either size, cleanliness, again, that dated furniture or amenities, and then overall comfort as well. So as a global trend, this is what we're seeing for top three positive and top three negative as well. And then Catalina, Catalina, I was just saying, Catalina's going to go over some of the global and regional breakdowns for you all as well.
Yeah, but moving on to the global and regional trends, we'll start, of course, with the global one. And we decided to focus again on two main global trends. And the first one is technology. And of course, this is not something new, but there were some interesting evolutions at the beginning of the year that we wanted to share with you. And we think that the title of this slide encompasses exactly the role of hospitality tech, the good, the bad, and the necessary, and all in one. The good relates to all advantages of hotel tech. The bad is the challenges that come along. And of course, the necessary, because tech has become essential in streamlining operations, but also managing guest experience. And we also see the research confirming this. Our industry fellows from Stay in Touch found out in their recent study that a majority of the industry, so somewhere at 80% of the respondents, have implemented a tech solution during the pandemic or plan to implement it before the end of this year. And for sure, we expect tech adoption to accelerate even more. But with this need of connecting everything and moving everything to the digital sphere, there are some risks that need to be managed. And one of them is related to data privacy and security. And with hotels collecting, processing, and storing so much information about their guests, it became one of the most targeted industries by the hackers, actually third one globally. So that's why we believe that keeping data secure is one of the pillars of the guest experience. Because the data breach can take away all the trust and credibility that you have built with your guests. And speaking of this, we'll be actually launching a series of articles, the first one being in July, where we'll deep dive into managing data privacy and security in this new era of travel, so stay in touch.
Yes, and speaking of staying in touch, it's now more important than ever to stay in touch with your guests. There's been a massive shift in the way that we, quote unquote, used to handle communication with guests in regards to check-in, on-site requests, relaying restaurant or hotel or event information. This is all usually done face-to-face, but as an industry, we've had to make adjustments to a more contactless experience. The challenge with this is that it can become very impersonal. That special one-on-one, face-to-face experience may not be replaced with a templated email or a generic voicemail to each guest. And to bridge that gap between maintaining guest comfort and safety in a contactless experience and making sure that they are still receiving that special touch, we at Trust You have a dedicated section on our platform called Live Experience to do just that. You're able to send brief on-site surveys and chat with guests to ensure their stays are more memorable in a good way, but also to handle any complaints or requests while they're still with you, rather than reading about it later as a public negative review online. And you can see the statistic here at the bottom as well, that you're 3 times more likely to receive on-site feedback versus post-stay feedback. And improving your guest experience can only do you good in the long run. So really pushing for an on-site experience for your guests really does both of you a big benefit.
And moving to the second global trend that we would like to focus on is sustainability. And for this, we wanted to share with you the results from a study Expedia did that looked at the road towards more sustainable travel. Specifically, what do consumers want and how do they approach this? What we see is that year over year, more travelers are searching for sustainable options. But the main challenge for them is that they are not sure where to start in terms of traveling sustainably. And that's where, as hoteliers, you can support them. By emphasizing the things that you do in terms of sustainability, whether it's about recycling, working with and promoting local suppliers, or having food waste initiatives, everything that you do that leads to a more sustainable experience can make consumers decide whether they want to book a stay or not. And especially this is relevant because travelers are willing to pay more for sustainable options. So make sure you don't forget about emphasizing your sustainability initiatives in the booking process and during the stay. And that was for the main global trends. We will be now discussing about regional trends, and we're looking at 3 regions that were included in the report: APAC, EMEA, and the US. Starting with APAC, unfortunately, in terms of recovery, this is the region that still has to catch up with the other ones. Some increase was reported in terms of international traffic, as you can see, compared to the same period last year. But unfortunately, with most of the countries, as an example, China, Japan, New Zealand, Singapore, still having restrictions on travel in the first quarter of 2022, and some of them really heavy restrictions. The international arrivals have recorded a very low volume, at least compared to the other regions. What was encouraging to see is that the countries that eased or lifted the restrictions have almost instantly registered an increase in the number of bookings. Among these being India, Fiji, Vietnam, Indonesia, Australia, they all saw an immediate increase. And for India, for example, the number of bookings even reached 80% compared to 2019. And this trend will most probably continue in Q2 when many other countries already relaxed or plan to relax the entry requirements. So we hope that we will see an accelerated recovery for the APAC region as well.
Yes, and just as we saw globally, we are looking at these impact scores regionally as well. And just as a quick reminder, this is again where we're filling in the gaps between what people say and then how they're scoring. So if we're looking at the top 3 impact scores here, service, hotel, and beach, these sentiments have the most positive impact on review scores in APAC region, which also happens to be the same top 3 as Q1 of last year. So not a whole lot of change there. But if we break it down, service and hotel, we also saw at the global level. Beach also sounds like an obvious one as far as location goes, but this is also indicative that not only are people striving for a beach-based hotel and a beach-based experience, but for open spaces and all nature-based options in general. So if you have something on your property or near that you can promote as a nature-based or open space experience, that is a positively impactful sentiment on scores. And if we take a look at those bottom 3, Wi-Fi room price, exactly as we saw in the global trends, just with price and room switching at the 2 and 3 spots. And this is also a clue into what we will be seeing in other regional breakdowns as well.
So this was all about APAC. Now we are moving to EMEA. And of course, we can speak of the beginning of 2022 without referring to the Russian-Ukrainian war. Honestly, I still sometimes have a difficult time accepting that this can happen in the 21st century. But what was impressive, though, to see was the kindness and support that was shown by the international community for the refugees, but also for those who decided to stay in Ukraine. At the end of March 2022, more than 4 million Ukrainians fled their country. And since then, this number more than doubled. The hospitality industry, being one of the most hit sectors during the pandemic, has united and showed one more time that it's an industry made by the people and for the people, and that there is always a place for more kindness in the world. And among the many initiatives from the industry, we decided to feature 2 of them that united the efforts of hoteliers. And the first one is Hospitality Helps, which was key in centralizing all the help hotels could offer in terms of accommodation. The second one comes from Sustainable Hospitality Alliance, and it's a more recent one. It's about 2 guides that offer support for hoteliers in order for them to know better how to deal when employing a refugee or offering an accommodation for a refugee. And of course, here we don't speak only about Ukrainian refugees. The conflict came at a cost for everyone, and I guess that the most visible impact we're still experiencing is the surge in prices. And this also has an immense impact on the industry. You can see just some of the examples of how much more we need to pay for certain product categories. And these are just numbers from the beginning of this horrifying conflict somewhere in February. So we expect that these numbers are even higher now. And of course, that these costs have affected the entire global community, but the EMEA being in the center of this conflict is the most hit region. And that's why we have compiled a short guide to cost effectiveness that you can read on our blog. And in a nutshell, it's a period when you can evaluate all your costs and see what can be prioritized in terms of investments. And if there's anything that you can do to reduce the, I don't know, the cost of utilities, maybe having energy efficient policy or making sure that system maintenance is done on time. You can also see if you can focus more on training and onboarding your staff to reduce a little bit from attrition that also puts so much pressure on the industry. And of course, using tech wherever possible to automate processes. We know that this sounds very good and simple on paper, but we are aware that all these actions require immense effort. But back to some positive news. The predictions in terms of travel in Europe were very gloomy at first, and especially when it comes to international arrivals outside the continent. However, somewhere in the middle of March, we saw these fears slowly fading, with both travel within Europe and international travel experiencing a significant increase. From our own data, we see that Europe remains the leader in terms of recovery, despite the major setback. What's also encouraging to see is that travel between Europe and the US has significantly increased, despite the initial doubts of Americans to travel to Europe due to the Russian-Ukrainian conflict. One of the prominent trends that was also in 2021, the intra-regional travel within the EU will still remain a preferred choice, with 3 out of 4 Europeans planning to travel before autumn 2022. And one of the most preferred destinations for them is the Mediterranean. From what we see in Q2 as well, people want to travel even more, seize the moment, and enjoy the peace and comfort of a trip.
I know I do. But back to touching on some of those impact scores specifically for the EMEA region. Again, we see those similarities between APAC and, of course, those global numbers as well, but with much higher impact scores. Looking at service, for example, what's almost 9 points for that particular category alone. Service quality is important. We know this. Hotel and what it provides is important, and location should be accurately reflected and promoted to the right guests, all of which we've touched on. And again, taking a look at those negative impact scores. But what you can kind of see here is the consistencies, but it really does affirm that these categories are here to stay. And if these categories are improved, your overall performance score can also be improved in the long run. So again, if we are looking at top 3 negative impacts, by correcting these, you will see in the long run, again, your overall performance scores increase. And that can only do well in the long run as far as what you can charge as far as ADR, your occupancy rates, your review scores online when people are looking for your hotel. So these are, you know, I'm sure it is tiring to see them over and over, but it really just does affirm that these are what they are and they're not going anywhere until you make the change. With that, we will be switching over to United States, last but not least. The US does remain to be a strong and viable market. Travel actually reached 60% of the review volume compared to the same period in 2019. And restrictions either continue to be or have been completely removed in regards to air travel, mask policies, vaccination and or testing requirements, and almost 75% of American travelers plan to take a vacation in the next 6 months, either domestically or internationally, as Kata even mentioned. But with rising gas prices, experts expect these trips to be a little bit closer to home. So again, touching on that inflation and things we've seen as far as results of that war that Europe and Ukraine and Russia are experiencing. As previously touched on just a moment ago, those COVID restrictions are lifting, making it easier for Americans to venture out. With the 4% vaccination increase since October of last year. Getting into the demographics, though, is something interesting that I found was it's the younger generations that are planning to travel more, while the older generations are planning to spend more. So baby boomers are planning to spend an average of over $1,100 per trip. And Gen X is right behind them with about $670 per trip. So the young generations will be out and about. The older ones will be out maybe less, but willing to spend more on, you know, a premier location or a stay experience. A fact that I also thought was very interesting that I did not actually include on the slide is that solo travel is going up as well. So 1 in 4 travelers are saying that they plan on traveling by themselves in the next 6 months. So we might see a huge growth in maybe even hostel stays or accommodations that, you know, would maybe benefit more of a solo traveler. But all to say that the US is working its way back, hopefully, to where we began pre-pandemic.
Yeah, and it's really nice to see that that people want to travel more, whether it's about the US or internationally, as Vanessa said. But there are some challenges that still remain for hoteliers, and the one that we chose to approach for the US is related to staff shortages. And this is not only specific to this region, but we saw it even getting worse this year. This morning, I read a study, a very recent study on how much the industry is affected by the staff shortages. And it said that 3 out of 4 hotels and restaurants are dealing with very, very serious staff shortages. As you can see for the US, the Bureau of Labor of Statistics estimates an insane turnover rate that can reach up to 75% depending on various months. And this means that only 1 out of your 4 employees will stay longer in employment. What we saw also recently is the impact of the staff shortages in airports, people not being able to board planes and enjoy their trips. But we'll cover more in our Q2 2022 report. These are some of the things that you could give a thought. Maybe they can help you cope with less human power. So first of all, look at the recruitment process. See if you can improve it or find additional platforms that scream to the younger generation. Second, invest in your managers. There is a Gallup study that estimates that managers account for 70% variance in employee engagement. So making sure that managers can create a learning and positive environment for their employees may make a small difference. Also, this relates to the onboarding processes as well, making sure that the new staff receives all the necessary information and training and the support from the other team members. Last but not least, tech usage may be of help either for recruiting processes or for automating simple actions so that your staff can take care of what's most important, guest experience. We also have another article on how to cope with less human power that you can have a look at it on our blog post as well.
Yes, as someone who lives in the United States, I have seen these staff shortages firsthand, really, and as Katil mentioned, between all industries, but especially within the hospitality industry. On a more positive note, we do have some pretty good numbers for the positive impact scores. And you will see one new addition to this list that we haven't seen in any other region, which is food. So along with location and service, food is a huge plus for Americans. I'm sure some of you are smiling or even laughing at that because as an American and for any other Americans on the line, you know that food is the backbone of a lot of American supersize me or portion size jokes. But this is also very telling of the market and that food is a major part of a guest experience, at least here in the United States. And taking that into consideration is really in a hotel's best interest. I mean, we see a lot of restaurants succeed or fail based purely on if their food is, looks great on Instagram or they have a cute, just amenity or ambiance in it. So food is something that is very impactful, and you can see almost 7 points there for the US region specifically. Again, no surprise on the bottom 3 negative, except that they actually have the largest deterrence in numbers, even over the global statistics that we saw at the beginning, with room having almost a potential of a 10-point decrease in score if the content of those specific reviews are not taken into consideration or implemented. So the bigger number you see here, the bigger impact it has on your score. If, for example, in the negative section here, you were to improve those, you would see scores increase dramatically over time. But yes, that is the impact scores specifically for the US region. I do want to take time. I know we've covered a lot in the session, and I would like to take a quick pulse check to see if the trends that you saw today are as expected or if any of them surprised you. So for those of you that have your mobile phone, go ahead and scan the QR code and let us know, or you can also give us your feedback at slido.com with the code you see here, 2356112. It is a live poll, so I will wait a few seconds for people to be able to scan or join, and then see how everyone is feeling. This is also anonymous, by the way, so no names will appear beside any response. So go ahead and scan QR code, join at the link that you see there, and we will get some feedback for you shortly in the live poll. And I am going to switch over to that screen as well. It does still have the QR code and the instructions on how to join on the left-hand side here. You can see combined with our last session as well, where people are sitting, and you can see again that live poll right there, shifting in numbers a little bit. It seems that most people, I will say as of this moment, expected the things that they saw today. So congratulations on being in tune with, those global stats and what your region is really working through right now. For those of you that said yes, that you were surprised by the trends, I hope that, this was educational for you, and anything that you can now implement in your region and in your hotel specifically, that can, help you with what we're dealing with in this year's new era of travel. And it looks like that is staying put for now. So I will go ahead and jump back into the presentation. And Casa will talk a little bit about what is next.
Yeah, so in terms of our data marketing initiatives, of course, we have the second edition of the Pulse of the Industry, which will represent the data from Q2 2022. We already started to work at it, and we estimate it to be published at the beginning of August. Also, if you have any insights, any trends that you would like for us to look more in depth, either in these reports or in other materials, feel free to connect with us, and we will make sure to have a look at them.
But you'll also be receiving a post-event email from us with the slides, recording of the event, and a myriad of other resources such as our LinkedIn live stream sessions that we mentioned, Pulse of the Industry report, and some additional relevant articles and blog posts. With that being said, thank you so much for joining us today. But before you all leave, we do have our giveaway announcement. And so I just had a colleague shuffle the names of who attended. And the lucky winner today is Roberto Pensa. So congratulations. We will be in contact with you soon to get you your $50 gift card. If you have any additional questions, please chat them in now. For those logging off, a reminder that everyone will receive, again, slides and the recording from today's event. And as you exit today's session, there will be a survey asking for feedback on the webinar. It should take less than 2 minutes, so complete. And in the spirit of communication and feedback, we hope to hear from you there. Thank you again, and have a great day. It does look like our questions and chat boxes are clear, so we will go ahead and end today's session. So again, thank you so much for joining.